Hi, when I'm looking videos on YouTube about this topic of electrical engineering and stuff like this, it will be typically videos from creators in the United States or somewhere in Europe, and in Europe especially maybe a lot of channels from Germany. And every time when you look videos there, it will be many times also about rules, regulations, code, stuff like that. And also the comment section will be many times full of discussions about compliances with this and that regulations and how you can pass inspections and these kind of things. But here I'm living in a country which is maybe called a developing country or emerging country, something like this. And one thing which we have here is that there is not many rules, of course, because you have to understand that these developing countries, in many cases, the populations are not as wealthy, and you cannot overwhelm the people with a bunch of regulations which at the end always cost money to follow, right? If I would compare now a German household installation with a house, how it's done here on the electrical installation side, just to comply the rules in Germany, which are one of the most extreme in Europe, because Germany, it is an over-regulated and bureaucratic country. Just the main panel in a house, newly constructed house in Germany, will probably cost you 2,000 or 3,000 euros. Nobody here in Thailand could ever pay as much money for the electrical installation here. It will be just overall just a few hundred euros, right? So that's why in today's video I want to show you the advantages, but also maybe speak a little bit about disadvantages of countries like here, like Thailand, where at the end you are in many cases free to do whatever you want. But of course this helps somebody like me. I have a background in electrical engineering, so for me this is a dream country. And this would of course not work in a Western country where for every job you want to do you need a certified company to sign for it, or whatever the case might be. Okay, so in today's video I will show you how an inspection here looks like, what the utility was interested to see in a newly constructed property like ours, which was constructed and even connected to the electrical grid just within the last 10 years. And then we will go to a local construction market here, and I will show you what you can get there in the section for electricals, what every simple person can go there and buy, which nowhere probably in the Western world you could go and buy something like this without being a professional for electrics, electrical engineering or whatever, right? So this will be probably interesting for you guys who like construction markets and see like a kid in the candy store what you could really purchase. Let's talk quickly about how construction is done here in Thailand. Let's say somebody is building a house or a small property like this, small holiday resort. You will have a contractor. The contractor is probably a civil engineer, and he is able to sign for everything what is related to construction. And then he will have a construction team. The construction team has a foreman and then a few guys who are more or less doing everything, right? They live on the construction site for the duration of the whole project. So here in this case, the construction team was living on the site for almost a year, and they were building after building, right? They did all the foundation work, the concrete work, roofs, plastering, the sanitary installations, and also one part of it, the electrical installations. But all these jobs are done by the team. So most of the guys there, they usually come from agriculture. So when the times are bad, they work at the provinces at home, they work at the fields. When the economy is good, they find some jobs somewhere else in the country. They join a contractor and they are put into a construction team somewhere, and then they would work like that. So they are away from home at that time, and every guy, you know, has some experiences in this or that field, but all of them are more or less all-rounders. Typically there's not a specific guy for electricity in the team, or maybe for the plumbing or whatever, right? So it's always one of the guys who maybe is the most clever for this topic, and he will then just study a little bit and do those jobs when there is time for that, right? So in our case, most of the time it was the foreman who then did the electrical stuff, you know, putting the conduits and the wires, cables, etc. The problem with this is, of course, that the work is only done as well as the guy is instructed into that topic. In this case, when we did the main building here, it was actually like that I was here sometimes, and when I initially saw how they started, I got a little bit angry, and I pulled the contractor to the side and told him, look, this is all absolutely non-standard what you are doing here. And I took the foreman. Luckily he understood English a little bit, and I gave him a basic training in electrical installations. And at the end it turned out pretty good. But most of the stuff, you know, the supply, the distribution, etc., I then did by myself, especially those areas which normally professional companies would in other countries have to do, which would have to be inspected. I, of course, here in Thailand, I do not have any certification for any work in electrical engineering, right? In principle, in any other country, I would have not been allowed to do that kind of work. Right? This is where the border is actually drawn from the regulator, from the utility, what is actually interesting them, what they also had a look on it, and I will show you what they inspected, and from where on they actually said, behind that point is not in our interest, that is yours, and you are responsible for that. All the internal distribution inside the property, every building, how it was connected, how it was earthed, every PV system which was installed here was outside of the interest of the regulator here. So let's go to the main distribution board. This was the only place in the interest of the regulator. I will show you what was inspected there. This here is our main distribution board. It is the first distribution point behind the transformer and the meter. So we have the power coming in via 4 big cables. These are 94 square millimeter cables, 3 phases, and they are coming here into the main breaker here. This is a 250 amp 3-phase breaker. The only thing what was inspected here was that these cables are terminating into this 250 amp breaker, and that's it. And the other thing what was checked, that the grounding bar is grounded to a grounding rod here right next to the main distribution and connected with a 25 square millimeter copper conductor, and that was it. So the utility, the inspector was interested until here. So until the main breaker, this is what the regulator wants to see is correct. Everything beyond the main breaker, here I have 4 main circuits which are then further distributed as a TNC initially inside the property, and then you have TNCS earthing system from every building onwards. And that's actually it. They are not interested how safe you are, whatever you do. They are only interested of the safety of their equipment, right? So they want to see that the transformer and everything, the grid access is protected, but whatever you do, it's your responsibility. So that's why I actually do not know how detailed the electrical code here in Thailand is for the private consumer. If one of my Thai followers, maybe if he knows about this, and tell us in the comment section. Let's take a ride to the construction market and see what we can find there. Yeah, we are here now at our local construction market. It's a global house. It's one of Thailand's construction chains. And yeah, it's more like on the lower price spectrum, so mostly domestic products, not so much high-end imported stuff. But as you see here already at the entrance, you won't find this in Austria. I will compare everything a little bit with Austria, because that's what I know. They have already solar panels here, poly monocrystalline half cells here. You see the price, that's about $180 for the 450 watts panel. Yeah, this kind of stuff in Austria you will have to go to a solar installer. No way that you will get this in the construction market. So let's go inside and see what we can see. We are only looking for installation stuff, electrical installation, so then I can compare this for you. We still need to use the mask here, so let me just explain the difference when you go to the construction market here in Thailand. These markets are actually supplying basically everything what exists on the market for everybody, not just a private person, probably also companies. That's the difference, like to Austria, where the construction markets are only serving the public. So you will only get stuff which is supposed to go to a private person. In Austria, when it comes to electrical installations, there will be a sort of limitation what you can get, and this will be somewhere at a power level of around 3.5 kilowatts, right? So if you want to get cables, breakers, everything like this, the limit is somewhere at 16 amps. And in terms of cable sizes, this is a 2.5 square millimeter cable, so what you can really get in a roll and stuff like this, right? So everything what's above this is just special material which you might have to use, let's say, somewhere in a panel, and that you can only buy like in as a piece of a meter or 2 meters, 3 meters, something like this. But here you will see there is absolutely no limitation of what you can get. Every person which doesn't know anything about electrical installation can get whatever it wants. Something what can be installed on a utility post, for example, which we just see right now. Okay, let's go through the electrical installation stuff, and I show you what I mean with what you can get here, and always tell you what the opposite would be somewhere in Austria, what you can go there. Let's start here in an ale which is already for heavy duty electrical installations, almost supposed to be used by utility companies. As you can see here, this is all something what would go on utility posts. So what really electrical installation companies need, nobody else, private person, would use something like this at home, right? Here we have metal conduits. So you have actually stuff which is kind of used in the United States, and then others again which is more likely to be found in Europe. So in Thailand you can actually find really everything of it. The metallic conduit, something like this, would not be used in Austria at all. Here we have grounding rods. You would never find this in an Austrian construction market as well, because this is stuff which only the electrical companies are supposed to be used and installed. But here, as we are talking about grounding, something like this, an auxiliary grounding rod, and you can also get the really big ones, long ones, for the main grounding. So all this metallic stuff is known more or less in the United States, not so much in Europe. And Europe, then we would use plastic conduits. You can find this here in masses, while probably in the Austrian construction market you will only find 10 pieces of each of these. So let's continue. All of these accessories. You see lugs for crimping 50 square millimeter wires, etc. 25. You would never find this probably in a Western market, because there you could not buy the cables for it anyways, so why would they sell you this? So you maybe have to order this in the internet somewhere, but here everything is freely available. Junction boxes in any kind you want it, flexible conduit. You see, there's nothing what you could not get. Here again the metallic stuff which is known in the United States more than somewhere else probably. Cables, here you have the single core stuff, the colored wiring. You would use something like this also in Europe. The only difference to Austria is that here you can of course get the 1.5 square millimeter, 2.5, which is normal also in Austria, but here also you will get 6 square millimeters in the big rolls, etc. So this is usually not available like this. And then of course here what only electrical companies would be able to supply to you somewhere in Europe probably. Single core, 25 square millimeters. This is aluminium here. Aluminium I saw up to, you see here, 35 square millimeters. Aluminium I saw up to 50 square millimeters, while copper you can get up to 16 square millimeters. So you can transmit serious power with this sort of cables. And this would never be something you could just get in a construction market somewhere in Austria. Then we have the specialty here in Thailand. So these are the ready-made cables here. And in Thailand you will find 90% of all cables just as double core. And this is actually a problem, because here many local contractors, they forget about grounding. And the reason is because all these cables are only available in double core. And if you want to now add grounding, you need to add an extra wire. If you want to add a grounding wire, you need to take one of these here and add it to your installation. And this is what many forget, and it costs also extra money. And that's why a lot of houses will only have certain places grounded, and a lot of outlets or light outlets will actually don't have grounding. So as you can see, all these cables, just 2 cores, 2 times 2.5. You will hardly find one with 3 cores. They do exist, like here, 3.1.5, so you can use something like this to build an extension cable. But it is 90% at least, all of cables do not have more than 2 cores. Okay, this is a copper 1 times 16 square millimeters. So this is the stuff you use for distribution to supply whole houses, and all this a simple person can buy here in Thailand. Solar accessories, here you can find a few 12-volt inverters, some gel batteries, some PV wires. Here in Thailand, many farmers are actually using solar equipment for doing irrigation, and yeah, but it will be more or less 12-volt, easy configurations. So if we look here at the circuit breakers, etc., you can find 2 standards here in Thailand. One will be the DIN rail stuff, and the other ones are the American style. And the difference again, in Austria you would have 16 amps, 13 more, maybe then 20, 25, but then it will be kind of the limit. And here everything goes up to 63, etc. So here main breakers for main distribution panels. For this you can only go to the specialized shop, or not even that. Maybe only companies will receive this somewhere in Austria, but not here in Thailand. You can buy whatever you want. For the regular installations, there are finished consumer units here. If you look, example, this one, it does not even have a RCD built in, just a main breaker and other MCBs. But interestingly, if you look here, very high amperage breakers. So something what you would never build in an Austrian house. You would have mostly 10, 13 and 16. If you have some high powered appliance, then maybe something more, 25. This unit does have an RCBO inside, but it's, you know, this is more the domestic stuff. The quality is not that good. So many different companies. I once bought a Siemens unit here, but they don't have it anymore. And then other enclosures for your distribution panels. So everything here what you need. Next aisle we have here plugs. These high powered 1-phase, 3-phase plugs, European style. Junction boxes, these metallic junction boxes, you will know this more or less from the United States. Then here all the outlets, switches, etc. Many different brands. This construction markets mostly has the domestic stuff here. As you can see, there's nothing what you can't get. And yeah, as a simple person, you can buy stuff what usually only professionals would be able to use somewhere else. So that's a big advantage, of course, for people who do have knowledge about the matter and they want to DIY their own home installations. The disadvantage, of course, would be that if the regulator allows everybody to buy whatever he wants, that on the other side, of course, nobody would care if you build something what can easily kill you. So yeah, so the people have to really know what they are doing, and that's a good thing about it, that nobody's standing in the way for you of that, to do that. This is a Thai construction market, the area of electrical installations. So I hope you found it interesting to see a place like this. So please tell us in the comments how it is in your country. Can you get all this stuff like I showed you here, or do you have to go to specialized shops, or do you have to hire some companies to do this for you? Yeah, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I see you next time.